go back before smartphones. Cell phones, satellite television, cable television, color television, black and white television, broadcast radio, radio telephony, even before a young man named Marconi. Because before him, there was semaphore, like those fire towers they had in Mulan or Lord of the Rings. But for battery-powered stuff where you can send texts, songs, videos, or photos from a smartphone to a tablet, who even knew you could do this sort of thing? As it turns out, no one did, until two guys with beards figured out that electricity, light, and magnetism are three sides of the same thing: energy. James Clark Maxwell, a Scottish physicist who invented some of the first color photographs, wasn't trying to send messages by wireless. After all, people had electric telegraphs to send messages in Morse code. What more did they need? Maxwell just wanted to show that electricity and magnetism were mathematically equivalent to light. That's right, your smartphone started out as a bunch of equations on paper. No way. Professor Maxwell's equations got him a lot of attention from other physicists who thought his idea was either amazing or ridiculous. The equations needed an experiment to be confirmed. That's where this guy, Heinrich Hertz, comes in. Hertz was a graduate student in Berlin where most of the professors thought that Maxwell's ideas were lame. But Hertz thought them worth testing. Hertz built an electromagnetic spark generator that included a battery, two big brass balls, and two small brass balls. If Maxwell's theory was correct, the spark would generate another spark across two small brass balls on the receiving antenna. This took only 4 years, your life in high school, to design, build, set up, test, write up, and publish. When Hertz's articles were published in German, scientists all over Europe were shocked to find that Maxwell was right. Now they had new questions to ask about the behavior and theory of energy. But they were professors, and back then, professors didn't have to get venture capital and grants and investment money to commercialize their discovery. No. That was left to this guy, Guglielmo Marconi, who barely finished high school. He was smart. He learned 3 languages, and he kind of liked physics. But having an Irish mother when you live in Italy makes life difficult. So instead of going to college, he stayed at home, read up by himself, and dropped in on the local university's physics lectures. When he was 20 years old, vacationing in the Swiss Alps, he read Heinrich Hertz's obituary. Poor Heinrich died when he was only 37 years old. But reading about him got Marconi thinking, how far could you send and receive an electromagnetic wave? Fortunately, he had everything he needed to find out. An attic for a lab, an allowance from his dad, and a brother and a servant to do the heavy lifting and the walking. Because someone has to go into town to get the battery acid, to charge those brass balls, and someone has to do the walking further and further away with the antenna and the 2 small brass balls to check for the signal. And for the next 18 months, that's what Guglielmo, his brother Alfonso, and Mignani did in their big backyard. By the end of 1895, Marconi could send a signal over a mile to the far side of Celestini Hill. His brother Alfonso responded by firing a rifle. It only took 30 years, twice your age, to turn Maxwell's equations into a really, really crude radio. Marconi wasn't the only one to experiment with Hertzian waves. After all, those lectures he attended were taught by Augusto Righi, who built his own electromagnetic spark generator. Alexander Popov in St. Petersburg, Russia, built an electromagnetic spark generator and communicated with the ships of the Imperial Russian Navy. Jagadish Chunder Bose, Kolkata, India, built a wireless transmitter. Oliver Lodge, a professor in London, he built a transmitter and showed you could communicate up to 200 feet, 60 meters for you metric people. Edouard Branly in Paris also built a system, but for experimental purposes only. Nikola Tesla in the US, he got a patent before Marconi, but he misunderstood the physics and never made it work. Only Marconi saw the profitable possibilities in electromagnetic communications. And being more practical and patriotic, he decided to offer his technology to, wait for it, the London Stock Exchange. Well, his mother was a Jameson. Perhaps you've heard of the whiskey? And the British Empire had the world's largest navy and merchant marine. Well, it seemed like a natural market for wireless telegraphy. Now, of course, there were the issues of sending a Morse code signal more than a couple of miles or kilometers, and ship captains who really liked their independence instead of being connected to land all the time. Can you imagine? And Marconi's antenna designs had their drawbacks. Drawbacks cost money. Still, Marconi had started the wireless communications industry, even if it took another 20 years or so to make a steady profit. But that's another story.